Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're gonna make techno with Ableton push 3. So even though if you don't have the Ableton push 3, I will still put a little Ableton window so you can still follow up. Anyway, the idea is not to recreate everything from scratch, but more about sound selection, what track or element I decide to create in a track, how to build a track. I'm gonna show you the MIDI pattern. I'm still gonna show you a little bit of the sound and some of the important effects, and also a way to add variation to your sound. So sometimes I will use some of my Ableton rack. They're all available for free. I will put the link in the description to all the one I use in this video. The great thing is, like, the final project, you can grab it for free. The link will be in the description, and I made sure to make some macro and stuff so you can easily customize it. It's an 8-track project that you can easily customize with macro. And the great thing is, because it's been made with Ableton only, you can use it with the push 3 standalone, so you can just grab the project and go to make music whatever you like. So let's jump into it. We are at 140 BPM. Our first track will be a kick drum. I use just a loop for that. Kind of a modern, punchy 808 style of kick. If you want to learn how to make your kick drum from scratch, again, link in the description. One tip I can recommend you is to look into Ableton, Audioreakt, EQ8, and you have few kick EQ presets that are quite interesting. And I wouldn't use them for mixing, but more like in sound design way. And for example, I use one here. And you're gonna hear without and with. Then I personally adjusted the scale here because the effect was a bit too pronounced, but yeah, that might be something you wanna look into. Now for the bass, I use meld, and meld got 2 oscillators. So the oscillator A would be kind of a basic sine wave, but then in oscillator B, I've mapped it to the macro of the instrument rack, and when you bring up the filter, you can add a bit of character. If you want to, I'm gonna leave it like this for now, but again, for you to experiment, you can change the oscillator type and both macro from the oscillator of meld. Then in the rack, you got a bit of delay. I know it might sound weird, but I like to use delay because it adds a bit of movement, a bit of stereo. Now, if you're concerned about the phase, people always freak out about phase. I think you sometimes need to trust your ears, and if you think and feel that everything is okay, you didn't lose all your low end, you didn't lose all your punch, then it's fine. Then I have reverb. Again, you might sound weird on the bass, but I like it add a bit of room, a bit of stereo also. Then I did the sidechain. This is a rack I made. I put it in the description. It's just a pumping effect. Auto filter with a low pass to kind of muffle a little bit the sound a bit more. And then utility, mainly to make everything under 120 Hz mono. This is no mandatory. You can go up until 60, I guess, but for this type of track, I like to have my sub a bit more focused, a bit more in mono. And in terms of pattern, I will put the layout in melodic sequencers plus 32 notes. So this way I can put, let me put in solo. Here, make sure I put the fixed length to 1 bit because I want something very short. And then, so G1, G0, actually let me put for Ableton. And then G1 and G1 again. And if I go to the clip here, you can see it, and we have something like this. And with the kick. Great, but I feel it's a bit off. And this is something that happens often to me when I sequence a bass line. What can happen is that the melody is great, but the groove is a bit off. And sometimes just shifting the starting point will help that. So here on the push, you have start offset. Because it's by step, you're gonna need to hold shift and change it, and now you can change the starting point and it will shift the sequence. Okay, if I do this, you can try different position, but I prefer this one. So this is the tips I wanted to show you. Now usually when I have my groove going, either I will go in the drum, or I will often also try to create an ambience to kind of set the mood a little bit of the track. I usually put, if I want something darker, a little bit more derby, or so that's gonna be our next track. So here again I use meld, and the trick I've done here is to use kind of noisy oscillator of meld into the plate resonator filter. Meld have like this kind of weird plate resonator that can be even scale awareness. I made a video with tips with meld where I explain it a bit more in detail. So that's the idea of the main sound. Then I will have an EQ to remove the frequency. Like there is some resonant frequency because of the resonating filter. Then I have shifter and auto filter. I'm gonna come back to it later. We're gonna activate raw, it's just for loudness. purpose. And then finally, I use hybrid reverb in convolution mode with the cloud and pulse response. I really like to use the hybrid reverb when I need to kind of give a certain mood or ambience to my sound, really add some kind of color. Now I left the shifter and the auto filter. The auto filter, I used a vowel filter on the auto filter, and again, it's kind of a resonant filter that I'm modulating with an LFO, and you're gonna hear it's gonna add a bit of movement. So this is a great way to add movement to a steady kind of pad or ambient sound. With like filtering, you can use comb filter, you can use kind of phasing effect, it's worked really well. And then I have shifter, which if you check here, it's in pitch mode and it's detuned from 100%, and you can see here it's at 0 wet percent. And the idea is to bring from time to time a little bit of the wet amount to create this weird mix between the original signal and the detuned signal, which create this weird tension you're gonna hear. So this is great. And now if I put fixed length, 8 bar, and I record. Now I've done that manually, but you could use the internal LFO to do that. One trick I can give you, if you have LFO on the shifter, LFO on the auto filter, try to have them at different rate, slow rate, but different. So like this, they don't resync in the same time and they are always kind of shifting. So you get this always evolving type of sound. Yeah, so really like this type of sound because it's really add tension. Now what I like to do is to add a similar kind of track, like I already talked about it. It's like this kind of noisy texture. So why to use this kind of noisy ambience? First, it will kind of accentuate this tension, kind of add a kind of a haunting vibe, a bit scary, like a scary movies kind of stuff. And also because when you have like kind of noisy texture, it's usually help and works well for the groove, because obviously noise is very close to like a hats or shaker or ride kind of sound. And so if you even sidechain it a little bit, you get not only a nice ambience, but also something that accentuates the groove a little bit. So to create this, I use again melt and same idea, a very noisy oscillator. Here I use the crackle, and I use the vowel filter, again very resonant kind of filter. So you get this by default. Now obviously we're gonna add some effect. First, we're gonna add hybrid reverb. It's the same preset than the previous one, just a bit more dry wet. Nice noisy texture. Here I use shifter in frequency mode, so I kind of pitch it down, but in a more interesting way than just normal pitch. Like frequency shifter and ring modulation in techno, it's a no-brainer when you wanna pitch or get weird metallic tone. Then I have autopan, which gonna help the sound move a little bit around your head and in a more rhythmical way, because the rate is syncing 1/3. Can hear it going left right quite fast. It's with a sine wave waveform and slightly out of phase. Then we have EQ, which is gonna obviously filter the sound. I just want the higher frequency. I also remove annoying resonance, and finally, like I said, some sidechain, and then you can just record it. Alright, next up is the drum. So sometimes I do them before the ambience, sometimes after the ambience. It's great to have some element because it's really important for you hats to fit the track, obviously. So it's all about sample selection. I don't really have tips because it depends what you're after. It depends on your tracks. Some people really like to use the 808, 909 kind of classic sound. Sometimes you want to try maybe something a bit different. But yeah, usually you will have closer hat. I have two different. I'm gonna tell you why. Open hat, I had a bit of delay on the open hat. I have a second open hat, more like variation hat, then very noisy ride, and a clap. So I like to put the layout in drum 16 velocity because you can really play with the velocity. Here I'm just gonna put 1 bar. And for the closer hat, I'm gonna do the classic kind of crescendo velocity pattern. So we start with low velocity. Let me just put here, tack, and then we go up, and then the one which is offbeat, even higher, and then the last one we go back to the minimum. So we get a driving effect like this. Now you can add a bit of variation. So for example, here on the second, you will go again with a bit higher velocity, so you get something like that. Now this is close hi-hat is more like a very driving close hi-hat. Sometimes I will even play with the GK if you want to add variation. Now I'm gonna put it in mute for now. And we're gonna focus on the second close hi-hat, which gonna be playing more with the open hat together to create a nice groove. And here we're just gonna do 2 times, one on the beat, one off beat, and the second one same but without the one off beat. So we got something like this. Okay, now we need to add the open hat to make a bit more sense. An open hat, we're gonna have one strong here and one with a lower velocity here, so together we get bring back the other close hi-hat. Cool. I need to double the loop for our last hat, which I'm gonna use at the end of the bar to kind of add variation. So I'm just gonna put like this, increasing the velocity. Press like this in solo. You're gonna hear what it does. Now it's always gonna play like this. So one thing I like to do is I will change the probability so it doesn't always play the same. And so sometimes we play maybe all together, sometimes we play just the 1, 2, and the 4. Sometimes we play like always a different combination. So this is great to add variation. And you see here, it just play the last, maybe now it just plays the first, but this will always change. Maybe it play none. Finally, we have the right. So the right, a pretty basic pattern. The one off beat strong velocity, and then the one on the beat lower velocity, and the one in between also lower velocity, and you get this. Nice. Finally, I have a clap. So the clap, I can play it on the beat classic, and then I can play with the repeat. I can leave it like this. I'm gonna mute it because I don't like when it plays too often, but yeah, just to give you an idea. All right, so now it's time to create our kind of main hook. I'm gonna change the layout to melodic sequences plus 32 note. I like that because I can play note and then put them on the step sequencer. So here I also use melt in the very similar way than in the bass, where you will have the classic sub is kind of a classic sine wave, but then I map oscillator B type and then macro 1, macro 2 to the instrument rack. So you can, if you want just oscillator B, you have a mix here, or oscillator A. So this is great if you want to add variation. You also have this filter which kind of control the tone. Great to add variation. And then some effects. So I add saturator just to add a bit of loudness, soft sine, amp. I add raw, mainly to add a bit of loudness and a bit of grit, overdrive. Then EQ8 is just to cut the very high and boost a little bit the high. Then we have auto filter, which is kind of the overall filter. Delay, ping pong, hybrid reverb, and then drum bass as a group processing, and sidechain. And you can hear already the pattern a little bit what I did. So let's move fixed length. Let me put 2 bit. Let's put in solo. Up, this one down. and an octave upper here, and another one here. So we have this now as basic pattern. Let me put it here. Okay, so first this one, we need to make it longer. And now the other important things that we need to do is this preset have kind of a glide effect. So if this note, which is higher than this one, is going a little bit over, you're gonna have this nice glide effect. So here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna nudge a little bit. So let's play and let's nudge it and bring like this. And maybe this one we're gonna reduce the velocity. And I'm gonna double the loop and yeah. Okay, now it's great, but what usually works well is to have this kind of call and answer sound. What I mean is that you have one synth which is playing one pattern, and you kind of leave space for another synth to play. So like when the first synth, so for example this one is playing, you can feel like sometimes you could add something is missing, you know, like to answer the synth, to kind of... Here I add the synth, but you know we could have a sound on this kind of step to make things even groovier. Because here you hear it's expecting to have something playing on that step, but instead of doing with this instrument, we're gonna create a new instrument to do that answering. So for this sound, let me go down. I use a rack of mine, which is called Drift FM. Basically, I made a video about drift and I kind of create a rack at the end of the video. This rack is available for free, I will put it in the description. And it's great because it's a rack where you have a lot of parameters to kind of shape the sound you want. And you can see you have many variations here. So I could actually change different preset until I find one I like. I'm just gonna revert to the one I like. And so we say it needs to play here, so maybe we can bring up the volume a little bit. And you can now you can also shift a little bit, nudge. Yeah, and actually I forgot to activate raw and reverb. That's why maybe I needed to crank up the volume. I'm gonna leave it like this because... Alright, now we are pretty much done. We have our main element. Now what I will add, it's more like little kind of SFX sound which are popping here and there. And I've made a rack actually for that and the video about it. I will put it in the description again, where you can kind of create this nice style of things. Now, one thing I modified is here I kind of made it MPE compatible, so depending if you have push, depending where you play up and down, it will kind of change the filter and other parameter. And you can pitch down or up. So it's making it very expressive. Here again, you can change different type of effect. So that's pretty cool. Now what I will probably do is I will do one SFX now and I will duplicate the track and create another SFX that kind of answer, or like having 3-4 SFX that just play like once every, I don't know, 8 bar or something like that. And yeah, you just record that. And here I'm just going to do the same at different pitch, but you get the idea. I'd actually overlap that. And yeah, we pretty much have our track. So here maybe I would add an extra ride, few SFX maybe, but the job is pretty much done. And yeah, that's pretty much for today. Hope you like this video. Hope you learned a few tricks here and there. You can grab the project for free. I'll put the link in the description. Play around, make a remix. I put a lot of macro like I said. And yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.